AskReddit. What's the worst thing to wake up to? Part 2. Artillery. Had that happen too, especially when you don't expect it. I went on a long weekend with wifey to a rental and arrived in the dark. Apparently it was next to a military firing range, and at 8 a.m. the next morning a dozen howitzers fired rounds. Yourself as a student in underwear in front of the entire second grade, and everyone is laughing at you. This happened to me in kindergarten, minus the dream part. My nana and mom made me wear these overalls I didn't like to school. I was a little teacher, which meant I sat next to the teacher in my own rocking chair in front of everyone. I stood up, my overalls had unclasped and fell down to my ankles. I will never forget it. Your partner who died in their sleep next to you. This to me is the worst thing I could possibly wake up to. This happened to the husband of a couple I had known and loved for years. I met them when the wife was dating a friend of mine, and the husband was friends with the guy that the wife was dating at the time. The original relationship amicably dissolved, and all parties were close friends for years. Everyone was happy when the two longtime friends fell in love and got married. Then one morning she was gone. She died in her sleep next to her husband. As someone who has finally found the love of my life and has many plans for the future, it's the most devastating thing I can think of. 2 a.m. smoke detector battery chirp, and you have 7 smoke detectors on 10-foot high ceilings, so you have to get a damn ladder out of the garage at 2 a.m. in the morning. Change your batteries on a schedule to avoid that. A few months prior, we had upgraded our smoke alarms to be compatible with our alarm system. I woke up to chirping, which was upsetting the dogs, so not only did I have smoke alarm chirps, I had crying dogs. I'm pissed because I'm thinking the batteries are only going to last 3 months in the new ones. I checked the app to see which one was low, but the app is showing the battery status as good on all of them. Great, the app doesn't work either. I paced around trying to find the right one to replace, and after 4 or 5 chirps in total, I'm not hearing anything. I'm 99% sure it was coming from the one closest to the kitchen, but the low battery light isn't on. I replaced the battery so I don't have to worry about being woken up again. About 2 weeks later, I'm pan-searing some steaks and the fire alarm goes off. I go to snatch up my phone, anticipating having to turn off the alarm app to avoid the fire department from being called, but nothing. My dumbass then realizes that I had set the old alarm on our junk counter and other clutter had gotten set on top of it. The old one was going off, and it's likely the old one was the one chirping. I don't know why it stopped chirping that night, but for whatever reason, it did. Now on the plus side, batteries in the new alarms do still last about a year, and the app does warn you when they're getting low. A gun pointed inches away from your face. Story time. When I was around 21, I had a night of binge drinking with my roommate, and we drank until 6 or 7 in the morning. The house next to us, being upset about us being up all night, called the cops on us around 7 to say they heard gunfire. Now, we weren't blasting the music too loud, because when I went to the backyard throughout the night to let the dogs pee or go join them for a pee in the yard, what do you expect? I was drunk. The music was not notable more than a foot away from the house. A few times my roommate went out back to smoke a cigarette, and I joined him to continue our conversation while he smoked, and the music wasn't audible then either. Anyway, I finally got a great idea. I wanted to wash my car, so I slowly drove it down the driveway which leads to the side of the house, and opened the gate to the backyard so I could use the hose in the backyard. This seemed easier to me than finding a hose out the garage and connecting it to a picket in the front of the house, and maybe waking up the neighbors by washing my car at 7 in the morning. I went inside to grab a bucket, soap, and sat down for another beer and passed out on the couch. Next thing I know, I feel my roommate tapping me on the nose. I'm in that half state of drunk and asleep and can't be bothered to tell him to get off because I'm sleepy. Again, I get tapped on the nose and shaken a little, being told to wake up. Again, I say, "Get out, let me sleep." This time I hear, "Wake up and step outside, now!" As I slowly open my eyes, blurry, and they begin to adjust, I see a handgun inches from my nose. Everything else is still blurry as the handgun comes into focus. I think, Why is my roommate pointing a gun at me? As I focused more, I see past the gun and notice a uniform and a badge comes into focus. Again now I hear, "Wake up and get outside." It was this cop who was trying to wake me as my roommate was sitting in our backyard handcuffed and 8 policemen were in my house, all drawn guns. I slowly get up and say, "Okay," as they roughly take me to the back and handcuff me as well and sit me on the concrete in the backyard. They continue to clear the house, dogs wandering the backyard staying near me, and all the cops around us kept asking, "Where are the guns?" My roommate did have a gun cabinet with a few shotguns and rifles, so he tells them in his room he had a cabinet. The cops then kept yelling about the handgun. "Where is the handgun?" We didn't have one. Now mind you, I'm drunk, half asleep, and still confused, so I'm asking how they get in the house. Why are they here? I'm told to sit still and keep quiet. Once the house is cleared and they check us for guns, I asked them if I could put my dogs inside so they wouldn't run out the backyard because they had our side gate wide open. They were nice enough to let me tell the dogs to go to the other side of the yard where I had kennels for them and then lock them in there. Started asking us about the handguns again, saying a neighbor reported hearing lots of gunfire, probably from a handgun coming from our house. I said no, we've been drinking, but no handguns here. They kept up the questions, asking why I had my car in the backyard. If I wasn't trying to hide something, why is the car in the backyard? I say I was going to wash it, which they looked at me like, why not just wash it in the front like normal people? You're trying to hide something. Where are the keys to the car so we can search for it? At this point, I just wanted them out, and I knew I had no guns in the car, so I tell them. They check the car. The rest of the house again gets tossed around, but no handguns. Just the guns in the cabinet, which were unloaded. They break out some powder to put on the guns to see if any had been fired recently. They hadn't. So they gave us a warning about firing weapons in a residential neighborhood, to which I say, are they sure it was us? May have been another house. They say no chance. Your next door neighbor here said he clearly heard it coming from this house. Okay, but we don't have handguns. Only rifles and shotguns will make completely different sounds, and none of them have been fired in a while. They finally leave, and in the drunk state, I have to clean up the house they turned and tossed around. Asked my roommate what happened, if he had shot any of them while I was passed out. He said once I passed out, he got on the kitchen phone to call for pizza delivery and kept getting pissed that none were open yet, when he noticed someone walking in our backyard. He opens the door to ask who the hell was in our backyard and was greeted by the SWAT team that promptly slammed him on the ground and began to run through the house. And that's when I was woken up by one of them with his gun pointed inches away from my face. A neighbor called the cops on us firing guns, so the SWAT team came out and woke me up with this handgun a few inches from my nose. A doctor. This would depend on if you saw the doctor before you fell asleep. The cops banging on your door. This happened to me once. They had the wrong address. Scared the living daylights out of me. I had a nightmare where I was covered in ants. I woke up and relieved that it was just a dream. Then I realized I was actually covered in ants. Oh man, I had forgotten about that time I woke up covered in ants and you just reminded me. I can attest to this. It is a freaking nightmare to be woken up this way. Totally traumatized 8-year-old me. To the sound of the cars. I live near a big road with lots of traffic and it's just awful. At 5 a.m, already awake because of it, and this is happening every single day. Same, lived here 7 years and never got used to it. It's also straight away and every bag with a souped up Honda or Mustang has to floor it. There's also railroad tracks with a switch at the lumber yard about a quarter mile through the woods. The train echoes through the woods and shakes my house. Never mind when it just sits there idling for hours. Waking up dead. Sorry boss, I can't come today. I am dead. Well, that's not an excuse. See you at 9. I see you too have experience working in retail. A bat on the ceiling. Don't worry, in America, you can just sell your car to pay for the rabies shots. Or yourself. A wet bed. I woke up to this every night until I was 9. Thanks, genetics. I woke up to 3 firemen banging on my door to my apartment room, hopped out of bed into a pool of water, instantly realized what was going on and ran into my bathroom to turn off the tub and sink. I opened the door to those firemen, and my roommate, with his hands over his head, looked around to see my apartment flooded. I sleptwalked and turned on the bath and my sink. Your phone says it's 2 minutes until your alarm goes off. Isn't this a good thing? This means you woke up naturally and usually are much less tired. I hate it because when I realize my alarm hasn't gone off yet, I get all excited thinking I have time to fall back asleep for a while, which is the greatest feeling in the world. Only to be let down moments later when I actually look at the clock and realize I actually have to get up. Call from your teacher, wondering where you are for your final state-run exam in high school. Aperture. Well, something like that, the Czech version of it. There is only one set date, statewide, and if you miss it, you have to repeat it in September, and there's almost a certainty you won't make it to university in the same year. About an hour after it's officially finished, people from the education ministry come pick up the papers, and then there's nothing you can do about it. I was woken up by the call from my teacher wondering where I was at the time it was starting. The thing is, my high school was about 45 minutes from my home. I rushed in, finished the missing part after every other student went home due to being teacher's favorite. For once it paid off, and saw the people from ministry getting to the building just when I was leaving. I was just on my way to buy a huge bouquet for my teacher. I graduated with honors. Here we are, 7 years later, and I still have the lightest of nights of sleep when there's anything important coming up in the morning. Crying children. When I was younger, and me and my baby brother shared a room, in the middle of the night he started crying. My mum came down in the room, and when she left he stopped crying. A few minutes later, my brother starts crying again, and I think of what could make him be quiet. Then for some reason I think, hey, the TV makes me be quiet. So then I ask my brother if he wants to watch TV, and of course he says yes. So we go out to the living room and turn on the TV, and I'm thinking, watch an episode or two, then leave him and go to bed. The TV was on the input where it's all staticky, and we didn't know how to change it. So as little kids, we started screaming our heads off, turned off the TV, then ran back to bed. Neither of us slept for the rest of the night.